Hello world, Stephen Michael Zach here, and today we're going to be taking the Blackmagic G2 Mini and we're going to be making this a cinema rig. Yes, we're recording in 4K UHD, that's all I need. This will be great for documentary work, for interviews, but let's jump into it. First off, let's take a look at the camera itself. First off, runs off a Sony NPF battery. On one side you have your in and out micro SDI. You also have a microphone there. Up top, you've got one little quarter 20 there, and this is the battery release here. And then you've got your power, your USB Type-C, and a full HDMI. And of course, you have all your buttons here. Now, this thing does not have ISO. It has something called gain. I'll post a list as to what gain is for what ISO. And then on the bottom, there are 3 holes here. I've already attached the plate here, but there are 3 holes. You can use 2 of them so that this is not going to twist around on you. That is awesome. And that is pretty much the bare bones here. You've got the Micro Four Thirds cap release here, and that is it. So let's go ahead and put the camera aside and let's build out the rig. Now, first off, I am using this SmallRig. I've already attached the quick release plate for time, but what I really love about this quick release plate is you can turn this knob and actually pull this flat so you can actually get to the screen if you have a screen. I have the same one on my Sigma FP and I absolutely love it. The other thing I love about this little I'll call it a cage, is the fact that it's got a V-mount built into the back here, so you can just go ahead and slap your V-mount battery on here and you're good to go. You can also adjust where this lies. So you can adjust it forward or back. I usually keep it all the way forward for now. Let's go ahead and take off the battery here and let's start building, starting with the bottom. Now, there are 2 ways to build this. I'm going to show you first, in this video, I'm going to show you how to build it with the rail system. Now, you don't need to include the rail system, and that will actually make it a lot easier, a lot lighter. This will probably make it about 7 or 8 pounds, but I'm going to add a rail system nonetheless. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to take our plate. You want to make sure the bigger one is in front, in back here, and drop the smaller one in the front. And we're going to use the back hole with the bigger screw and the center hole with the smaller screw. And we'll just line that up. And we're going to go ahead and put the smaller screw in first. And we'll just go ahead and screw that down. Make sure that's nice and tight. And then we're going to screw the second one down. Now, don't be alarmed if the second one does not go all the way down because these are fairly big to be inside here. Because it's probably not made to do so, but we're going to go ahead and do it anyway. And we'll get that locked down about as much as we can. As you can see, this one is overlapping. That's fine as long as this isn't going to move around and it's nice and straight. You're okay. So there we go. We've built that. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to add this cell phone holder. Now, there are a few other things you can add. Now, we could take something like this, which is one of these Samsung T5 holders, if we were going to be using a Samsung T5, and we could probably screw that right into the back here, and that's where our card would be stowed. But I have actually another option for you, a different option, something that's going to be a lot smaller than this, but we do need to keep it cool. So we're going to add, first off, this cell phone holder. We're going to go into the into the bottom 2 holes here on this side. So we'll go ahead and do that. And I'll grab my multi-tool here, also made by SmallRig. And there we go. There is the base. And finally, we're going to add the quick release plate. Now, I have this Manfrotto quick release plate because that's what goes on my tripod. So we're going to basically line up the 2 holes on the bottom here. And we are going to screw that in. Make sure your lens right here, make sure that is pointing forward. Because I've put it on backwards before, and it is awful when you finally get this in and then you have to take it off because you did it wrong. So make sure where it says lens and the arrow is pointing, you've got it in the right spot. And basically what I'm doing is I'm lining this up with the large hole here and then the 2 smaller screws, the 2 quarter 20s here. So this will take a bit to line these up. And then we'll slide those and slide that down. So we're sort of there. And we'll kind of give this a tighten here. So that's sort of down. And then we'll just kind of slide this one into place. And you never want to tighten it down completely, or tighten it down enough. And I do like these screws that have the little handles. These are very, very helpful. So I would replace both of these with those. Let's go ahead and make sure that is locked in nice and tight. And we'll screw this down. Again, make sure that is nice and tight. And there we go. We are all set. And that is pretty much the cage. Now let's take a look at the camera. Now for the camera on the top, for the top handle, we are going to add this SmallRig. Now, I do like these, however, the washers wear out very quickly, so you do need to make sure that this is in this 1/4-20 quite solidly. You really have to exert some force here. So we're going to, again, use our multi-tool. And we're going to go ahead and make sure that's nice and straight, because that's where the top handle is going to be. And once you have that where you want it, going to be torquing it this way. So I want to keep my fingers here. I really want to kind of turn it this way as I pull back on it, so that we are in super tight and I can't move this by hand. There we go, and I've already attached the quick release plate for the thing, so we don't need to worry about that. We don't need to spend time on that. There are 3 holes at the bottom. You're going to use the 2 outer holes. And then we're going to take our handle here, and as you can see, this snaps in, and it won't release until you push this little tab on the side. So very cool. We're going to do that. We're going to twist this down like so. Give it a finger tighten. You might want to use a little bit of a wrench here, but there we go. And now let's go ahead and we're going to push on one of these little spring tabs here. And we're going to slide that in like so. We'll go ahead and let's go ahead and unlock this and adjust the back how we want it. And once we've got this in, we're going to throw the front switch here, which is going to lock the camera into place. And there we go. We have the camera pretty much built. Now let's talk about a monitor. Now, since I am going uber super small, I am using this. This is the Sakura monitor. I did review it up there. It was not one of my favorite monitors, but I actually find myself using it more and more because my old iCan monitor has a dead pixel right in the center. So I have been using this for run and gun. So we'll go ahead and we'll just spin this into place like so and spin that down. And you can mount this handle either backwards or forwards. For this build, I'm just mounting it forward here. I'm mounting it back here in the normal position. Sometimes I like to mount my handles the other way so I can hold this. But there you go. There you have it. Now let's talk about I/O. Let's plug in things before I go for a lens. Now I'm going to be controlling the monitor via DTAP. Now, I will say that you do need a 99-watt battery for all of this to work. I tried it with a 50, and I actually couldn't power the camera through the 8-volt out port. So you will need a 99, which will add some weight. You can, however, power it through the DTAP. You can power the camera through the DTAP on a 50, but you cannot use the 8-volt out. So we'll go ahead and put on the battery here. And actually, before we put on the battery, we'll put on the battery and we'll take it off. So we have the battery on. Now let's talk about what we're going to use instead of the SSD. And what we're going to use, and I have to give a big shout out to Anson and Company, because if I'm saying that right, because he had a video where he showed me this. This is actually an SSD. It is a Type A SSD that I got from China. This is a 5 gig, I believe it's a 5 gigabyte SSD. Yep, this is 5 gigabyte SSD. Cost me about $109 with tax. It did take a while to get here from China. And I will say that I am very, 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 very impressed to be able to go from something like this, the T5s, which are very expensive now because they barely make these, I don't think they make the 500 gigabyte ones. I think they only make 1 terabyte and 2 terabyte now, and they're very expensive and hard to find. Or you can go with something like this from China, which is roughly about what this used to cost. So very, very cool. One thing I will say about this SSD is that it heats up a lot. And gets very, very, very hot, again, because it is very small and there's no airflow, no fan, no place for it to go. So let's go ahead and hook this up. Now I am using this adapter piece. It is a type C to A. So we'll go ahead and snap that in. And what I'm doing is plugging it into the C pointing in the back here. Now let's talk about how we're going to keep this cool. And that is with one of these Ulanzi ZV1, Sony ZV1 fans. This is the old version with the suction cup. I bought this and then they came out with the new version, which has a spring. I'm sure you can use the spring version as well. And you can use this either with battery or without. I highly suggest just charging this and using it without the battery because it is slightly quieter. But when you plug this thing in, it actually gets a little bit louder. So I would highly suggest just using this on battery. But what we're going to do is we're going to take the back here and we're going to go in to where our cell phone holder is. Going to lift that up and then we're going to push that down and lock that right in. And now, as you can see, we are going to get airflow. Once we turn this on, yes, there is going to be a little bit of noise. It's going to be like using an Arri Alexa, only the fan never shuts off. So there will be a little bit of fan noise, or you can, when you're shooting, you can turn it off, and then when they call cut, you can turn it on and let it run and cool off your SSD. Now, I will say that I let this run for an hour with the fan on it, partially with the fan pushed in so that I could power it, and then I pulled the plug and pushed it all the way out so that it was pretty much center. And this SSD card ran for an hour straight, so with the fan blowing on it, and it kept it very cool. It did heat up just a little bit, but it was completely fine. So that is how we are going to keep the SSD cool. Next, we're going to go ahead and hook up the power. And of course, we're going to use a curly wire here to hook up the monitor. And this is going to go into this L shape here. So we'll go ahead and pop that in. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to pop this into the side here. Now we'll pull out the SSD first to make sure the connection is good. And we'll go ahead and plug that in. And then we'll take the SSD and it should fit right underneath this thing. There we go. So it is basically one solid block unit here. Next, we're going to power the monitor using a DTAP2 port here. And we'll go ahead and unscrew this. Now, I did have a SmallRig little clamp here that would hold this, that would hold the wire. It actually broke, so I'm going to end up doing something else for now until I get a replacement. But we'll go ahead and pop this into the battery, and we'll run this under the handle here, and we'll run this up into the monitor like so, and we'll take the extra wire here and we'll clamp it together. So that's fine. That'll be fine. And now we're going to power it with a barrel to barrel. Now, this is a 12 volt. You want to make sure you're coming from the 12 volt into their 12 volt. Do not use the 8 volt because it won't work. So we'll go ahead and plug that in. And we'll bring that underneath here like so. And we'll go, and we're not going to plug in the camera because the thing with this camera is the minute you plug it in, it actually goes on. You can actually turn it off afterwards, but we're not going to do that. Now, there is an option to use a wire here. I have a very thin L wire here for keeping the fan charged. So we'll go ahead and let's go ahead and slide that out here. And I'll go ahead and plug this in with the wire up, and let's go ahead and just take off the battery so you can see what I'm doing here. And I'm going to go ahead and we're going to go ahead and let's go ahead and pop that in. There we go. And then we'll slide this back as far as we can till it hits the side here. Now, one thing you'll notice that when we use the plug, it does not reach the SSD. It barely reaches the SSD. So there's going to be a lot of air blowing here, hitting here, and fanning out, it's actually not going to cool this side very well. It was fine. This side didn't get too hot because there was so much air hitting the back of the camera and then dispersing out the sides and the top. It was fine. I basically used this setup for about a half an hour, about 45 minutes, and then I changed. I pulled the plug and just slid it over and let it blow completely on there. So kind of two ideas that you can, two ways to do it. And then of course I'm going to go right into the A port on the top of the camera here, like so. There is your top setup. And we'll go ahead and turn it on, and the fan is going. And take a listen to the fan. And take a listen to the fan. So really not that loud at all. Next, we're going to take the lid off here, and we are going to put on the PL mount. Now you can use a much lighter lens than this. I am going with the PL mount. Now I do have a Micro Four Thirds to PL mount adapter. I would not recommend this one. This one actually sticks a bit. I'll leave a link down below on the one that you should get. But this one, so far I've had a few, maybe because it's new, it might stick a little bit. But you want to open this up. You want to line this up perfectly like so. There we go. Make sure it's seated properly, and then you want to close it off. And there we go. Next, I'm going to feed the rods through the bottom, like so. And this is, again, these are optional. And these rods are a little bit long. They're really just all I had in my studio right now. I would definitely say get smaller rods if you're going to do this. We'll go ahead and we'll just push these all the way through. Give this a lift here. And let's go ahead and we'll make sure this is nice and even. We'll go ahead and lock that into place. And finally, we want to use a lens holder just to hold this, because this lens is a little bit heavy. So I'm going to slide this on the front here. It's not the straightest work I've ever done. I'm going to make this loose, slide it down just right underneath the lens here. I'll put it right here, right at the front, because it won't slide past the gears. And we'll lock it into place. And we'll lock it into place. And there we go. Everything is set up to go. You are ready. So there you go. That is the full rig here. And then finally, we're just going to go ahead to the side here and plug this in. The camera should go on like so. We'll go ahead and turn on the monitor. And if all goes well, everything should be working just fine. There should be a light going on there. And we'll pull off the cap. And as you can see now, we are ready to roll. So very cool, very easy setup here. And it makes this camera look like a professional camera, which is very cool. Now let's get out a scale, and I'll show you how heavy this thing is. As you can see, this thing is 8 pounds and 7 ounces. So that is actually not terrible. I will say that when I have my whole system for my Sigma FP, that is about 11 pounds, 10 to 11 pounds. So this is already so much lighter, which is very cool. And again, if I didn't need to power the monitor, if I went with a Sony MPF battery for the monitor, that would be one less cord, and I could actually probably power the camera through the D-tap, and that would be all I would need. So it would eliminate all these cords. But again, I'm trying to run everything through one battery. So there you go. There you have it. Now I did run this in this configuration, like I said, for an hour. I first had the fan in this position, and then at 45 minutes, I pulled out the power here, which you can hear the fan just went down, and I slid it all the way so that we were getting a lot of airflow here on down both sides. And you can run it for that. I think this battery on low will last like an hour. So just have a few of these, or just be ready to just kind of push it over and power it. But take a listen at the difference between powered and not powered. So here it is, not powered. And you hear it ramp up. and that is half power. So when you plug this in, it does ramp up a bit. But if you can live with that amount of noise, then this will be fine. If not, I highly suggest, if you're going over an hour shoot, I highly suggest just unplugging this and letting it run by itself on battery. So there you go. There you have it. That is pretty much it. I will say that within an hour, this battery was only at 75%. So with this whole setup, you could probably get 4 hours of battery runtime, about 4 hours, I'm going to say. So that is pretty awesome. And there you go. That's it. This is the Blackmagic. This is their G2 Mini, the Mini G2, set up as a cinema camera. So those are my thoughts, but I want to know yours. So leave your questions and comments in the notes below. Also, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and don't forget to mash the bell button to be notified when we drop a brand new video. And feel free to use the links below as it helps out the channel. I'm Stephen Michael Zach, and I'll see you next time in the build room.